Welcome back, my friends, to Faces of History, the place where we stand not just in marble halls or throne rooms, but in dark taverns, candlelit studios, and back alleys where genius and danger meet, where we lean close to the wild souls who painted beauty into the world, even as they dragged their own lives through the gutter. Tonight, pour yourself something dark and strong, maybe wine fit for Rome's backstreets, because tonight we stand beside a man who changed painting forever, a man who lit up saints and sinners with the same ruthless light, whose brush laid bare the dirt under angels' feet, the grime beneath the glory. His name? Michelangelo Merisi de Caravaggio, a runaway, a murderer, yet also a master who tore apart old ways of seeing. In his shadows, light becomes a blade, faith becomes flesh and blood, and the world of painting, stiff with conventions and mannered sweetness, was never the same again. Sit back, light a candle, and come with me to the smoky corners of 17th century Rome to meet the bad boy of the Baroque, the man who painted the truth no matter how ugly, and in doing so, made it beautiful. Michelangelo Merisi, the name he was given, though the world would come to know him by the name of his hometown, Caravaggio. Born in 1571 in a small town just east of Milan, a patchwork of vineyards, farms, and parish churches, a quiet corner of northern Italy that had no hint it would one day lend its name to a revolution in light and shadow. Caravaggio's story begins under the shadow of a black cross. The plague, the same pestilence that had ravaged Europe for centuries, returned to Lombardy with pitiless force when little Michelangelo was just 6 years old. In a few short weeks, the plague tore through the Merisi family. His father, Fermo Merisi, a respected household administrator and master mason to the powerful Sforza family, was carried off. So was his grandfather, within days of each other. The boy and his mother, Lucia, were left clinging to each other in a house where death still seemed to linger in every corner. Yet life went on as it must, and in that shadow of loss, young Michelangelo's restless spirit found its first shapes. His mother held the family together fiercely. She knew the Sforzas, and through them, the boy was exposed to the swirl of the court, the bustle of craftsmen, masons, builders, the men who shaped palaces stone by stone, fresco by fresco. He saw what hands could make and what minds could dream, but the seeds of defiance were already in him. He was sharp-tongued, impulsive. He bristled against any leash, any dull routine that dulled his hunger to see the world as it truly was. After all, he had seen death up close as a child. The perfect polish of polite society could not hide the decay beneath. When he was about 12, his mother died too. The final anchor cut loose. Orphaned, rebellious, but not without a spark of genius, young Caravaggio drifted to Milan, the nearest great city. There he was apprenticed to Simone Peterzano, a painter who claimed the lineage of Titian himself. Peterzano's workshop gave him the classical training he needed: how to grind pigments, prepare canvases, sketch figures from life, render skin, fabric, fruit so real you could pluck it from the table. But even as he learned, he itched to break the rules. He found the sweetness of Venetian painting, the soft colors, the gentle, idealized saints, stifling. He wanted grit. He wanted sweat on a brow, shadows that clung to skin like secrets. He soaked up the city's street life, the crowded markets, the dirty inns, the whiff of garlic and spilled wine. If you believe the stories, he often ended up with bruised knuckles and a split lip from nights that ran hot with arguments and dice games. By his early 20s, the young man from Caravaggio was restless again. His inheritance gone, his patience for Milan's tame art scene exhausted, he shouldered his few belongings: brushes, pigments, a heart full of blasphemy and brilliance, and turned his feet toward Rome, a city bursting with marble saints and gilded cathedrals, a city that needed an artist who could show people what holiness really looked like, in the flicker of a guttering candle, in the dirt beneath a fisherman's feet, in the blood on a martyr's neck. A city that didn't know it yet, but was about to be scandalized and electrified by the restless child of plague and promise. And so, my friends, our wild Lombard steps into the heart of Christendom, not with a bishop's blessing or a prince's purse, but with fists, fury, and a vision so sharp it could cut stone. Rome at the turn of the 17th century, a city swelling with cardinals and mercenaries, pilgrims and pickpockets, marble saints and backstreet sinners in equal measure. The Pope's banners fluttered above the rooftops, while the gutters below reeked of garlic, wine, and spilled blood. It was a city hungry for art, but not just any art. The Counter-Reformation Church needed pictures that could speak to the common soul. No more distant Madonnas drifting on clouds. They wanted saints who looked like you and me, saints with dirt on their heels and a story in their eyes. Into this city stumbled Caravaggio, poor, proud, his clothes ragged, but with an artist's sharp gaze that missed nothing. The swirl of cloth on a beggar's back, the rough hands of a street vendor, the way light hit the side of a butcher's face. All of it, raw and waiting. At first, Rome nearly chewed him up. He scraped by painting flowers and fruit for bigger, safer artists. He slept rough, pawned his own clothes for pigment. He painted boys peeling fruit, baskets overflowing with bruised peaches and dusty grapes. But even these still lifes had a tension to them. Shadows gathering at the edges, skin so real it seemed ready to rot under your nose. It didn't take long for his arrogance to rattle his employers. Caravaggio was no meek apprentice content to paint pears for polite palates. He wanted bigger canvases, bigger stories, and bigger risks. Fortune, or fate, or maybe sheer trouble led him to a powerful door. The cardinal saw in Caravaggio's streetwise style something scandalous but magnetic. Here was a painter who could jolt tired eyes awake, so he took him under his wing, housed him, fed him, and above all, gave him walls to paint that mattered. From Del Monte's protection came Caravaggio's break into the great churches. He painted the Calling of St. Matthew, that masterpiece of shadow and startled light. A dingy tavern corner where Matthew, a grubby tax collector, sits counting coins with cronies when Christ steps in, his finger pointing like a dagger. No shining halos, no marble columns, just a shaft of light and a moment that feels alive, raw, sudden, holy. People gasped. Some priests clutched their collars. Saints shouldn't have dirty feet. Who were these rough men with greasy beards standing in for apostles? But the people flocked to see it. And Caravaggio's name spread like oil on water. He painted the martyrdom of St. Matthew, Judith beheading Holofernes. No soft, demure heroines. Judith's blade bites deep, her face frozen in resolve. Blood sprays. Holofernes' eyes bulge in horror. For the first time, the Bible looked like the backstreets of Rome, flesh, fear, redemption tangled together in a single stroke. Success, though, did not soothe him. Fame brought money, but also envy, and Caravaggio wore his fame like a blade strapped to his belt. He swaggered through the streets with a sword he wasn't licensed to carry, quick to insult, quicker to draw steel. His nights bled into days spent fighting duels, carousing in taverns, smashing bottles over enemies' heads. He was arrested repeatedly for brawling, for carrying illegal weapons, for defacing another painter's apartment door with a malicious poem. The Roman police knew him well. Michelangelo Merisi de Caravaggio, the painter who painted saints by day and spilled blood by night. Yet the commissions kept coming. Why? Because nobody else painted like him. Patrons wanted a slice of that danger, that brutal truth that made holiness feel close enough to touch. He scandalized churches with paintings of the Virgin looking like the tired women who sold oranges on the street corner. Once he painted a prostitute as the Virgin Mary. And when parishioners saw the swelling belly, the dirty feet, they demanded the canvas be removed. Caravaggio did not care. He painted what he saw. He painted what he knew. Light and darkness, flesh and faith, all caught in a beam of harsh illumination. No illusions, no gentle lies. But the wildness that fed his genius also fanned the fire of his ruin. He made enemies. He racked up debts. He offended the wrong men. And then one fateful day in 1606, his fury crossed a line that could not be painted over. A tennis match, or maybe gambling, or a woman, sparked a fight with Ranuccio Tomassoni, a brash young man with political ties. Words turned to swords. Blood hit the ground. When it was over, Tomassoni was dead, some say castrated as he fell. Caravaggio fled, a murderer with a price on his head. The man who had lit up Rome's churches now found himself hunted in the shadows of the law. The artist who painted saints dying in agony now carried his own mortal sentence, a bando capitale. Dead or alive, anyone could kill him and claim the bounty. The Duke of New York, deliberate like a dagger scraping a table. So there he was, Caravaggio, darling of Rome, now its fugitive ghost, his fame greater than ever, his freedom hanging by a thread. But did he stop painting? No. He painted more urgently than ever, as if he could barter brushstrokes for redemption. Next, my friends, will follow him on that desperate flight, from Naples to Malta to Sicily and back again. The runaway genius, the hunted man, still painting saints even as he ran from his own devils. Why does Caravaggio matter now, 4 centuries after he stumbled into that shallow grave under a sun too bright for a dying man? Because look around any gallery that still hums with pilgrims. Wander the vast marble halls of the Louvre, the Uffizi, the Vatican, or a tiny dark-side chapel in Rome where tourists stand shoulder to shoulder, necks craned, mouths half open. So often it's his work they're squinting up at, his saints caught mid-breath, their faces not frozen in heavenly bliss, but trembling with human fear, hope, doubt. Before Caravaggio, painting often smoothed the world's edges. Saints floated, light was soft, sinners were moral warnings, not real people. Painters blurred the sweat on the skin and the dirt under fingernails. The divine looked polished, distant, something you could worship but not touch. Caravaggio dragged the divine down into the gutter, or maybe he raised the gutter up to heaven. He turned his models, the drunks, the streetwalkers, the beggars who pressed him for coins outside taverns, into saints and madonnas and martyred apostles. He painted Peter upside down on the cross, not as a marble statue, but as an old fisherman with gnarled feet, veins bulging, sweat beading at his brow. He painted Thomas poking his dirty finger straight into Christ's open wound. No symbolic gesture, but flesh meeting flesh. Doubt meeting faith, right there on the canvas. He painted like he lived, raw, unsparing, honest. And in doing so, he cracked open the polite lie that art should flatter, should polish, should pretend. Today, every time an artist dares to show the sacred in the ordinary, the beautiful in the broken, the light flickering inside shadows, Caravaggio is there, ghost in the paint. Every photograph that catches a single shaft of light carving through darkness, that is Caravaggio's legacy. The crime dramas lit like confessions, the theater that plunges us into darkness and throws a single face into harsh relief, that is the echo of his chiaroscuro. He invented that word's real meaning, not just light and shadow, but truth and concealment, honesty and danger, wrestling on the canvas. He matters because he reminds us that beauty is not always polite, that holiness might look like a tired mother barefoot in a dirty room, that truth might get you killed, or at least chased through the alleys. He matters because he showed us that art is not just for palaces and cardinals, it's for taverns too, for the street corners where life bruises your knees and salvation might be leaning just around the next door, flickering in the candlelight. He also matters because he reminds us that genius is not clean, that the same hand that blesses the canvas might break a nose in a brawl the next night, that the story of art and of all who shape culture is rarely pure. It's human, messy, stained with wine and blood and wonder all at once. When you stand before a Caravaggio now, the calling of St. Matthew, the beheading of St. John, Judith slaying Holofernes, you don't just see a painting frozen in time. You feel the room shift. You feel the shadows lean in. You feel the truth that art at its best makes you see the world differently, and that once you see it, you can't look away. And isn't that the whole point of history too? To shine a single blinding shaft of light into the darkness and make us flinch and then lean closer? Caravaggio, the genius fugitive, still does that, 400 years later. He matters because he lived as he painted, half in light, half in darkness, and so do we all. So now, my friends, the candle gutters low, and we stand in the hush of a studio long abandoned, the smell of oil and turpentine ghosting through the air. We've walked the narrow alleys where Caravaggio brawled and ran. We've pressed close to his canvas where shadows cut like knives and light gleams like grace. We've stood at his grave, unmarked, unwept at the time, yet brighter now than any monument of marble or gold. Michelangelo Merisi da Caravaggio, a name spat in the street and whispered in the chapels, a man who forced the world to see holiness crouched beside sin, who showed us that art, true art, does not comfort first. It confronts, it glares back at you, it pulls you into the grime so that you can find the spark of the divine hiding there. Remember this. His story reminds us that genius rarely comes wearing polite gloves, that brilliance often drips with sweat and sometimes with blood, That behind the calm facades of cathedrals, behind the silk robes of cardinals, there is always a trembling edge, a wild brushstroke that someone dared to drag across the smooth surface of order. And maybe that's the lesson Caravaggio leaves us, 4 centuries on, that the truth, whether in art or in life, demands risk, demands that you stand where the shadows are thickest, that you open your eyes wide to the flawed, holy mess of being human, that you do not flinch when the darkness closes in, but instead reach for the light that cuts through it. If you ever find yourself in Rome, or Naples, or even just leafing through a battered art book, find his work. Stand before it. Don't rush. Let the shadows creep in. Let the light break through. And remember that somewhere beneath that oil and canvas, in every flicker of candlelight, Caravaggio still breathes. Because the world will always need its wild saints and brilliant sinners, its gutter prophets, its bad boys of the brush who remind us that beauty is not neat, it is raw, flawed, fleeting, and forever alive. Thank you, my friends, for walking these dark streets and bright canvases with me tonight. This has been Faces of History. I am the Duke of New York, and I promise you, the shadows hold many more stories yet. So until we meet again, pour your next glass deep, light your next candle bright, and remember, history is not just the past, it is alive in us, painted in our shadows, glowing in our light. Stay curious, stay fearless, and keep your eyes open in the dark.